Life doesn't stop when the workday ends. On True HR Beyond the Office, Shannon Clark Johnston tackles topics that affect our lives in and out of the workplace. With conversations on mental health, reinvention, self-empowerment, and more, we share actionable insights to inspire meaningful growth. Join us for candid insights and guidance to help you build resilience, create balance, and thrive with confidence in all areas of your life.
Today's episode is all about the challenge and opportunity of leading a mission-driven company, especially when the mission and the business need to walk hand in hand. Our guest is Damian Finio, Chief Financial Officer of TerraCycle, an innovative global leader in sustainability and recycling solutions. With over 30 years of experience in the life sciences and pharmaceutical industries, Damian made the leap from the corporate world into a company where environmental impact is central to the mission. At TerraCycle, he doesn't just lead the finance function, he also oversees pricing strategy, HR, IT, and the commercial recycling segment. His background includes leadership roles at companies like AstraZeneca, Daiichi Sankyo, and Phibro Animal Health. Now, he's helping guide one of the world's most recognized sustainability pioneers toward long-term growth while staying true to its purpose. Welcome, Damian.
Hi, Shannon. Thank you for having me again.
Again. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
in the two-time club now.
Am I the first two-timer?
No, I've actually had a three-timer. But
Wow. Okay. All right. Some
close.
catching up to do.
You're close. Yeah, you got a little catching up to do.
All right.
It's great to have you back because, as we both know, we worked together in another life. And it was really funny when I saw that you went to this new organization, this sort of mission-driven organization, because it's really not, it's not every day you see a pharmaceutical exec make this move. So I'm just kind of curious, before we get into the meat of it all, what inspired you to make the change?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. I was at Phibro Animal Healthcare, so billion-dollar publicly traded company. We sold products in over 80 countries. My team was 160 people strong. Some of the people who worked for me had even more experience than I did. So it was more of like a maintenance job, I would say. Like it was a big, stable company, been around 80 years. You know me, I like to build, fix, whatever. There wasn't that much of that going on there. Interestingly, too, the other sort of twist, animal health, we made products that kept feed animals healthy. So not companion animals like cats and dogs, but feed animals, pigs, chickens, cows. My wife's vegan, so it made for some really interesting dinner conversation. So a recruiter came along.
And your wife is also in HR, which makes it more interesting.
As you know, I was going to say you're my second favorite HR person.
Thank you.
Yeah, so recruiter comes along, tells me about TerraCycle. I had zero interest. I was fine in the job, right? And then she was super persistent. And she's like, please just Google TerraCycle because this is a really cool company and I think you'd really like it. So long story short, I met with a bunch of people, actually more people than I've ever met for in any interview. I've met over 40 people in the interview process.
Whoa.
It's a whole nother podcast, but
yeah.
So ends up, I have dinner with founder Tom Zaki, who I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. And I was just like, I got to work with this guy. He's like mesmerizing. Like he's like one of the most interesting people I've ever met. And I looked at my own career, which is coming up on 34 years. I was thinking about in July. I know, 15 as a CFO. And said, you know what I've never done, although I've been a public CFO for the last 6 years, I never took a company public. And I would say that TerraCycle is a small company with some big aspirations. So my primary goal is like to take them to the promised land. Like they want an IPO. And so I was like, that'd be a cool thing to do as I start to ramp down my own career and think about son and retirement, et cetera. So that's kind of the backstory of how I went from this sort of big job to this small, super interesting company that we will talk about.
Yeah, I mean, 40 interviews. We definitely, maybe that'll make you a three-timer when we bring you on to talk about 40 different interviews.
Yeah.
So you go through all this, you decide you're going to make the change. What was the most surprising thing for you making this transition?
Well, it was the topic we're going to talk about today, right? So I come in and I'm trying to figure out, all right, like where's the company at? Where do we need to get to, kind of a thing, and start to meet with some people. And I would say, generally speaking, we have a younger population, and they're people who had a major having something to do with sustainability, or they grew up in a household that was super interested in the environment, et cetera, right? And I'm just talking about like, what's it mean to say we want to be IPO ready? Because they don't even know what IPO stands for,
Right.
basically, right?
And they probably
So I'm
don't,
up in
not
front of
that
a group.
interested in it.
Yeah, and I start to see some of the body language start to get a little uncomfortable. I start to see some faces twinge a little bit. Some, I'm like, I want to scratch that a little bit. So I'm like, hey, so like I'm starting to sense a little bit. And so they start to talk and open up. And it was like they didn't understand, like you're just all talking about profit. Like, what about the mission? And it was
Mm,
some good feedback for me that maybe I was, maybe I didn't connect the dots. Because in my head, it was super simple. It was like, well, the more profit you have, the better you can drive the mission. Like, what's your question?
right.
Right? But they were afraid that as we focus on an IPO and an exit, um, that we'll lose track of the mission, and
Right.
profits will start to drive decisions rather than what's best for the environment and what is core to the mission. And so,
Which is fair, I suppose. If you join this mission driven organization, then you have some pharma guy coming in saying like, we're going to do this, this, and this, right? I guess that's a fair kind of a reaction. Uh,
totally fair, but I totally didn't see it coming.
yeah, yeah, right. I know totally because you've been in this one zone your entire career. What were some of the things they were saying to you that like gave you this kind of clue?
I think when we started digging into like what is the core of what TerraCycle does, so just like it's like elevator speech, right? So we recycle everything that you don't put in the blue bin in your kitchen, right? So the reality is that most people think the reason we only recycle plastic and glass, and paper and aluminum is because they're the only things that can be recycled.
Yeah,
The truth
that's what I would
is,
think.
the truth is everything can be recycled. They're the only things recycled because they're economically feasible to recycle. So the cost of collection and processing is less than the cost of the material that you've mined. Urban mining, we call it, right? So you
Right,
can sell the materials downstream for more than the cost to collect and process. So that was the whole crux of TerraCycle, is like, well, how can you make all these other things recyclable then if that simple equation doesn't work? And we can
right.
get into that, right? But Tom Zaki sort of cracked the code, and the cracking the code meant at times Tom was more interested about like changing the paradigm about how people view waste. Like our tagline is eliminate the idea of waste.
That's the
Like there's
larger,
no, like we
the larger,
assume there's waste, right?
right,
Yeah. And so they thought when they get sometimes to make certain decisions with certain customers and they do this economic equation and it breaks even, I may say, well, let's go to the next deal then. Like, let's find one that's profitable. Where they were like, well, right now we would take that deal because it opens up a new waste stream. It's a new customer. Maybe it's a new country. Maybe it's a new capability that we don't have right now, right? And those things would drive decisions more in terms of weighting than like profit would. And
right.
honestly, had I not sort of had that conversation, let's be frank, profit would have been,
Yeah,
the driver. I
right.
would have said, why would we do that deal? It's break even. You've got four other deals that make money, or whatever, right? I would have made that sort of trade off.
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
was a trade off they weren't willing to make.
Got it.
That
So
was the fear.
so you know all about this larger mission and everyone's you know so passionate about it when you get there, but you start to feel like, okay, wait, maybe I'm not hitting the mark. What do you do next? You're hearing these things and you have a mission of your own. How do you
Yeah.
start to work through that?
Yeah. So I kind of took a step back and thought, well, one of my main things of my sort of CFO platform, and you've seen this because you've worked with me,
Mhm.
is transparency.
Yeah.
Like what are the numbers? Because so I had to assess like who sees the budget, who knows what we gave to
Is
the
there a
board,
budget?
right? What are we
That's always
showing
a
to
good question.
investors? Yeah, it's like try to understand like what do people see. And what I
Yeah.
found was there was really a very small group of people. And a lot of the people that we hire they're not like accounting majors or finance majors, right? They're back to like sustainability. And they may have an econ class or an accounting class somewhere along the way, but it's not their passion at all, right? So I would say relative to other organizations, the financial acumen was lower.
Mm,
So we have a very strong internship program. I worked with an intern. I said, I want to put together a program where I really teach people some just basic acronyms. Like, what does EBITDA mean? Like,
yeah.
what is EBITDA? Those kind of things. And so we did that. So I hosted these. They were called Power Lunches with Damian or something like that. So I made like a world tour, and it was a very provocative um, attempt. Like I was intentionally like
Yeah.
really pushing some of the norms and being like, let's talk about it. Like, here's what what do you guys say? And it was a very engaging thing, and it got really good reviews. And so people wanted more of it. So we've been doing this sort of like, it's like a lunch and learn type of
Yeah.
deal, to try to just connect the dots between mission, profit. What does IPO mean? What do investors care about? Why is year over year growth so important? Like some of these things that were super familiar to me, being a public CFO for 6 years, but these people never heard it. They're a privately backed company, right?
Yeah.
We're not even PE backed, so there's not some big PE firm behind TerraCycle. There's shareholders, but it's a private company,
Yeah. So
right?
what kind of responses did you get when you started to do this? I mean, did everyone welcome this information with open arms? Were there sort of like, hey, look, I don't think this is that important kind of a vibe? What kind of feedback did you get?
I would say overall, they like the transparency. At the same time, when you're transparent, it's a two-sided coin. So if you're going to explain all these terms and then you're going to stand up at a town hall and say, hey, we fell a little bit short this quarter. Now people are armed with the information to say, well, hey, is that going to screw up our IPO? Does that mean our company's not worth as much as you said when you talked to us 3 months ago? Like, so they start to like
Yeah.
you start to scare people a little bit.
Yeah.
So, you really have to couch your remarks and try to make sure everybody understands, like, hey, it's one quarter, or it's just this one metric. Here's what we can do to fix it. Then it becomes very collaborative of like, all right, what are the key metrics that people care about? Why did we miss? How can we fix it? And it becomes more of like a continuous
Yeah.
improvement kind of culture, right?
So interesting because, at this point in your career, you had to really dial it back and say, okay, like,
Yeah,
let me pretend like I don't know all the things that put myself in their shoes and come at it
right.
from a different angle. Do you have any specific examples of where this sort of financial, mission kind of butted up against the passion that people have for this mission driven organization and you had to sort of address it where, I don't know, set someone straight on kind of what the path is the company's really looking for? Were there people that you couldn't get on your side, so to speak, or you're, behind your vision?
Yeah. Yes. So another sort of observation coming in is we for a good chunk of our business, we contract with big name retailers, big name brands like Procter and Gamble, Unilever, Target, right? Big stores, Kohl's, whatever, like big name companies. We're a small company, so we're dealing with like procurement and legal. And so we sign these contracts. We try to sign them up for 3 years, but some are only 1 year. Long story short, like it takes a while to get
Yeah.
contracts signed
Yeah.
because we're mission driven, although I don't like this point. We will continue to service the customer, right? Continue to collect the waste and process the waste and recycle it, even if the contract's not signed.
Oh my goodness,
I'm,
did you start ticking like when this was going?
yeah, it makes me
Make me uncomfortable.
twitch even talking about it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm like, hey, the only way you're ever going to get the contract signed is if we stop servicing them. And they're like, no, no,
Right.
no, we're not going to do that, right? So I said, well, we have to like these decisions are sort of being made all over the place. We need some governance structure. So what we've decided to do is every Tuesday morning, 10 a.m., we have what's called deal committee. So all the renewal deals come up to committee, and there's sort of pre-described like who can sign off for what and signature authorities. But then there's also new deals. So every 10 a.m. every Tuesday morning, I sit in on deal committee. I listen to these like account managers come in with, well, here's what the customer wants, and they'll be like, well, procurement said, they got a really tight budget this year. They want flat pricing for the next 3 years. And I'm like, cool, we have a really tight budget for the next 3 years too. So where do we go from here? Right. So like that is where like there's like real time learning happening. So
Yeah.
I'm saying like, well, what did they ask for? What are you going to go back with? Like, we'll approve you for this, but your first throw back in the conversation should not be that. This is like your second throw. And like, how are you going to negotiate this? And those kind of things, right? And here's where we're willing to give, here's where I'm not willing to give. So it's like trying to give them guidance when we're up against like procurement, who really doesn't care about the service we offer. They're just trying to get the lowest price, right?
Yeah.
That's where the education really kind of hits the road. So that's where they will hear a few more Damianisms, right? And those will be like, listen, they'll say something like, one of my biggest pet peeve words is like, well, it's a strategic relationship. So
Hmm.
I'll be like, tell me what strategic means. And they'll be like, well, they also, it's a holding company. They own several brands and we really want to start to contract with those other brands. I'm like, how long have we had this relationship? How many new brands have you taken on in the last 4 years? Does that still sound strategic to you? It sounds like they're taking advantage of us to me. Is that what partnership sounds like to you? So I ask but they know
Yeah.
that's kind of my personality, right? And I'm just being like intentionally snarky. But the point is, at the end of the day, we are a for-profit company. We
Yeah.
have to stand toe to toe with these bigger companies in procurement, and we do offer a service. There's not a ton of companies like TerraCycle. We have some competition, but where we are across many waste streams in many countries, um, most of our competition is like one waste stream, one country. So there's somebody who recycles like beauty packages from like beauty products. So we do beauty products in like 300 other waste streams in 20 countries. They'll do Canadian beauty products as an
Mm,
example, right? So like there's some competition, so they'll put out an RFP and we're one of a couple companies, but we're the only one with the reach, that we
yeah.
have. And I'm like, sometimes it's not about cost, it's about quality. And also some of these companies don't really recycle. Like, I don't know if you've heard the term waste to energy.
No.
You heard of that? So like if you look at the hierarchy of recycling, the lowest form is landfill. That's not recycling, right? We just bury it. The next thing slightly better than that is incineration because it's not in the ground. The next thing better than that is incineration, but it's called waste to energy. So you burn it, but you harness that heat that's generated and turn it into energy. That's called waste to energy. That is technically recycling because you turned
Oh,
it into energy.
okay.
Next level up is recycling. Next level is reuse. So some of these companies play in waste to energy, but we actually recycle it, and there's a difference, right? So
Interesting.
there is some residual product that we'll have to do waste to energy, but our guarantee to a customer is when you send us something or we collect something, it'll be recycled, like the whole thing, not just like the parts that are worth money, but the whole thing. Nothing's going to landfill. And so it's like, how much did you talk up that service versus theirs? So you're trying to compete on price with somebody who doesn't do what we do. They send it
Yeah.
to an incinerator and they harness it. That's a lot cheaper than actually recycling it.
So this is really interesting to me. I'm just kind of wondering as I'm listening to you and how you had to sort of, I don't know if it's even go back to the basics, or it's reminding me a little of startups where you have to start to educate people who come on. So I'm just kind of wondering your own journey for this. Like, was it frustrating for you? How did you kind of come to this realization? How quick did that happen where you're like, oh, wait a second, I have to go on this tour. I have to explain this. I have to start to do these things I hadn't had to do in other companies, which is really explain very basic terms. Um, how was that for you? Like, how was that journey? Because I mean, I could see after so many years of doing this, like
Yeah.
it might be a little annoying.
Yeah. And this is probably more of a personality thing, right? I think some people at my age, I'm now 55, may have preferred the bigger, more maintenance role that I had at Fibro, as an example. But even though I am old now, I still have that
Please no.
energy, I like to build, and you know me well enough. I love people to sit there and like let me hold court and let me
Yeah.
pontificate.
So this kind
So
of worked
like,
to your
yeah, oh,
preferences in a way.
yeah, my kids and wife were like, dad, or Damien, it's so nice to like you seem happy again, like you're energized. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? It's actually a really cool company. It's kind of nice to be able to sort of share learnings over the year and some stories and seeing people like bulbs go off or them start to do something differently and start to develop people. And at a big mature company that has a lot more money and can pay for people who have 20, 25, 30 years of experience, it's really, really different. It's
Yeah.
just a younger group with a lot of passion, but not a lot of financial acumen coming into the organization.
Yeah.
So
And
I find
passion's
that
good.
that part of it really fulfilling, like not just the mission of recycling, but actually the people that are there that are
Right.
passionate about recycling.
Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
asked you that a little facetiously because I know for myself, it's well, and my theory is most people want meaningful work. And if you can have an impact and you feel like you're having that impact every day, that can feel
Yeah.
really meaningful. So
Yeah.
it's almost like the thing you didn't know you needed. But I think for you, knowing you a little bit, knowing some of your journey, it does speak to your strengths in many ways, as far as, like I said, at startups and really being able to go down to that basic level while at the same time having this, bigger vision over here.
Yeah. And I think I probably for a couple of years there, like underestimated the value of meaningful work.
Mm, most
I
people do.
wasn't even like pharmaceuticals. I think early in the days I was on like the respiratory brand team, and I have asthma myself. So I found it really rewarding to like learn more about asthma products and what are we doing to develop new asthma products. But as we got into, I moved into like generics, which is where you and I work together,
Yeah.
right? I don't know. I didn't have the same passion for the pharmacy, even though those products were super important. Some of the products when you and I worked together were used in emergency
Mhm.
rooms,
Yep.
really served a need and a purpose. But it felt different to me than like my early pharma days. So like to kind of tap into that, the meaningful work is like important again. Is I don't know. I found it invigorating. I'm re-energized. I
Yeah.
don't know how long I can do it. I am getting older, but I like,
Will
and
you
I'm
stop saying you're old, please? You're making me feel old.
and my boss is 12 years younger than me too. So, he just turned 43 and started the company as a Princeton dropout in his freshman year. And
Oh,
this is the
wow.
only, so he's only ever been a CEO, and this is the only place he's ever worked.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like it's a really good fit. I'm curious about, as you look at the company and you lead several different functions that are very different. I know a lot of people lump all the support functions together, but I have a vested interest in that. And I think, IT, HR, finance, all very, very different, very, very different skill
Hmm.
sets, very different perspectives often on
Yeah.
organizations. Do you find that it is, I don't know if easier or harder is oversimplifying it, but how is it different to help bring those folks along in the journey? Do you see differences in term based on what people do?
Yeah. It's interesting because, right in your wheelhouse here, being an HR person that you are, right? Like think of performance management.
Mm.
Come in the TerraCycle, super cool company, really unique, all these things. We have a very traditional performance management process. There's objectives. We do it twice a year. There's a five bucket rating scale, blah, 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 right? The just standard cookie cutter or whatever. I was like, when HR moved under me, I was like, let's just rethink this. Like, we're at this smaller company. We've got this cool culture. Like, we could do something. Like, we don't have some big board we have to answer to or whatever. Like, Tom, the CEO, sits right over there. He'll pretty much do whatever we propose if we're like passionate about it. Like, let's rethink this whole thing. So we're in the process right now of trying to come up with a unique performance management process that fits the culture, fits the vibe, fits what we're trying to do as an organization. We haven't cracked the nut yet, I will say.
Oh,
But it's like trying to shift the paradigm of like, yeah, it doesn't have to be the standard performance
yeah.
management process, which, as you know, a lot of managers are like, oh God, I got to do performance management.
That's a whole
But
other
like,
episode. That's a series of episodes, I think. Yeah.
but
Everyone has
like,
a different opinion.
yeah, but like, how do we do it differently? Like, how do we rethink it? What would fit? So like
Well, and
that
what are
kind
you
of stuff is
measuring
fun.
on? That's really the question, right? What are you going to measure people on?
Yeah. So yeah, that's again a whole nother. So we start, what are the metrics? What's important? What do we need for an IPO? Those kind of things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then making sure, taking some of my learnings from big pharma, AstraZeneca was big on like line of sight, corporate objectives down to an individual's objectives. They need to see how what they're doing every day fits into the bigger picture. We didn't really have that. So we're in the process for 2025 of like going from corporate to more like regional or department objectives down to an individual. But again, it's like taking these sort of standard traditional processes that we've all learned in other
Yeah.
companies, and then making it putting a little twist on it.
Right.
And you can do that in sort of a mission-based, quirky company like TerraCycle. I'm sure there's many others.
Well, and I think it's important in any company. I've always said you can't just take a plan and drop it over here in this company, in this company, in this company. Every company's different, and every culture is different, and the people are different. And so, if you don't
Yep.
customize it and really think that through, which it sounds like you're doing, yeah, it can be a real flop.
Yep.
So tell me, based on now, you've been here how long at TerraCycle?
It's about a year and a half now.
Year and a half. Okay. So if there's someone else who's either just coming into, a very similar situation, they've been in well, you are for profit, but they've been in the corporate space. Now they're coming to a mission driven company. What's some advice you'd give them for their first year?
Yeah. It's interesting. Like a few years back, there's a magazine, CFO but it's CFO magazine, but not CFO the magazine, which is the bigger one. There's more of like a regional one. And I wrote an article about like what to leave behind and what to take with you, kind of thing. But it was more about going from big company to small company.
Hmm.
Um, and the biggest learning in that, which I think is still relevant to this, is TerraCycle is not AstraZeneca. They don't have the money, they don't have the profit, they don't have the skills on board, right? It's like you have to sort of lower your expectations a little bit. Like, the systems aren't gonna, it's not gonna be an SAP HANA or
Right.
whatever. You may not have PeopleSoft or Workday. Like it may not be the big tools that the big companies use. But you have to kind of embrace that and kind of look towards like what's fit for purpose. Like maybe I don't need SAP HANA or whatever. There's other ERP systems that are simpler, easier, better fit for
Mm-hmm.
us. So you can't just go back to your old playbook of like put in the big expensive systems, processes, whatever, because you don't have the money and it's not going to fit. So you kind of have to like play the hand you're dealt with in a way.
Yeah.
The people aren't going to have the same level of experience or education necessarily. The systems aren't going to be as robust as maybe they were, but you got to figure out a way to like make it work, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's sort of the fun for some people like myself, but for others that could be 100% the source of frustration if you don't walk in with your eyes open. So like in that recruiting process, when I met 40 people, I was asking those kind of questions to try to understand like what's kind of the infrastructure because like
Yeah.
I like building stuff, but like that stuff kind of sucks to build actually. Like that's
Yeah.
not as much fun. More
Yeah.
fun to like rethink performance management than it is to like, oh, we have to implement a new ERP system,
Yeah.
right? That's
That's
kind of painful.
fun.
So you got to ask those questions so you know what you're walking into infrastructure wise. TerraCycle specifically, the guy before me was there for 13 years. He was a
Oh,
divisional
wow.
CFO at Procter and Gamble, and he was retiring at age 70. So when he took the job, he was in his late 50s, had 35 years experience, whatever. And he put together a really, really good foundation to build off of, which I was super impressed with for a company the size that it is. I was like, wow, all right, like
Mm-hmm.
the boring stuff there. Now it's like the fun stuff to layer on top of that. But not every company's like that, especially if it's a startup, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think you got to ask those questions and know what you're getting into, and then see what kind of budget or like authority or empowerment you'll have to change any of that stuff,
Yeah.
and how long it's going to take because it doesn't happen overnight.
Well, and I also found if we're sort of comparing to that startup environment, that you also, even if you you have the ability, the money, the resources to make these changes, sometimes it can be too much at one time. Like
Yeah,
you can't overwhelm the organization with 52 changes. No, it's just you have to always keep your finger on the pulse of what they're responding to or what they're not. That was always my challenge because I always wanted to do 52 things right away.
totally true. Funny you say that because we just had this conversation like last week. Because we want to IPO, we can like have organic growth, or we could buy EBITDA, like acquire small companies that are like us.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to do a mix of both, but we're having a lot of discussions with the gentleman who drives like the acquiring new companies. So he's
Mm-hmm.
finding companies to buy, right? So he wants to buy this one, and then next, we're going to buy the next one. And I'm like, I don't
Yep.
care how much money we have. I don't care how many companies you buy. We can only digest a company like every 9 months, give or take. So like, we're not going to do two or three a year
So smart.
ever, right? It's just not going to happen because we will cripple the organization. So it has to be paced, and well thought out, and focus on what's important. And there's certain things you don't need to integrate, whatever. But the pacing is important because
It's
we don't,
important.
like I said, yeah, we just don't have the headcount. And we're
Yeah.
not, you go to these big companies, you bring in like a consultant or somebody to like for heavy lifts. We don't really have the budget for that. Like we're going to do it ourselves basically. And we'll maybe and you got to reach out to some people. But we're not going to like engage like a I don't know, McKinsey or something. Yeah, that's never happening. So like
Yeah.
we're gonna have to figure this out ourselves.
Figure it out. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think in terms of the acquisitions, the number one reason they fail is people. And I know this
Uh-huh.
because of my world. There's a
Yeah.
lot of moving parts, but yeah, if you just keep doing it and doing it's a lot to do even the
Yeah.
smallest acquisition, and I think
Yeah.
sometimes that's underestimated. Uh,
Yeah.
well, this has been great. I always like to, you've given a few tips. I guess I'm thinking about the listener who might be out there who's thinking about making a move like this, maybe later in their career. They're thinking about
Yeah.
a mission-driven organization. You've mentioned a few things to look for. What would you say is like the number one thing someone should look for if they're considering this, and or maybe even look into themselves, like a quality you need to have, obviously patience, but what would be your advice to somebody who's listening right now? Like, that sounds like a good idea. I want to start to look into that.
Yeah. I think make sure it's your mission, I guess, right? Because there's mission-based companies, but that may not be like where your passion
Mm,
lies. And I think if you get there, you're gonna be surprised how passionate some of the people are there. So if you're not like equally passionate, it's a little bit difficult. We have a handful of people, I will say not even a handful, like two or three, who jokingly will say like, I'm actually really not that into recycling, right? And it's kind of like,
Like,
because
hmm.
because the trade-off is usually like convenience versus recycling. Like it's easier to just throw something
Yeah.
out. Takes a little work to recycle it. You have to
Uh-huh.
drop it off somewhere, like if it doesn't go in your blue bin, right? So anyway, it for those people in certain conversations, you can almost see they're just not as interested and passionate. So like I would really drill in on the mission and understand, is it truly your mission? Because it is going to drive decisions. And if you're not like 100% on board with it, not saying it'll be terrible, but it won't be as fulfilling, as if it was. And there's
I love
plenty of
that.
mission-based companies out there.
No, I love
I
that
would
because I
say,
wouldn't,
yeah,
I think that's really good advice. Really
yeah.
think about if you're going to make that jump, there's so much to deal with that you have to make sure you really believe in it.
Yeah, and like for me with recycling, I wouldn't say like I was like a super recycler. I kind of joked though, like I grew up youngest of five kids. My parents were 33 years old when they had me. So they were 33 years old with five children, right? We didn't have a ton.
They were over it.
So things like reuse or what like, we joke like we'd have birthday parties with birthday candles. And my mom would like clean off the candles and
Oh,
put them
yeah.
in a little bag and we'd use them again. Or like if she had plastic forks, she'd wash them
Yep.
and you'd see them at the next backyard barbecue or whatever. That's just how I grew up. But so I didn't really realize it until I kind of knew, but I think for me, I was like not opposed to the mission. Like, how can you argue recycling?
Yeah.
But I probably got more passionate about it after being there. So now, my kids will come in with like a water bottle or something, and I'll be like, "Where's your reusable water bottle?" Like, do you know single-use water bottles are one of the
Good.
most, things filling up landfills. So I'm like that dad now. I'm that husband.
Yeah.
But you start to open your eyes to all this stuff, and you see
Yeah.
all this waste, and it just like horrifies you when you
Yeah.
just think of all the stuff. And I'm like, that's going to be buried in the ground. Or that's just going to be incinerated, and it's like a shame. So it changes like your everyday,
Yeah.
like how you operate in your personal life too. Becomes the mission becomes not just work, but it's like, like if I'm going to Costco buying cases of water, like I would feel bad now in this job. I'm like, that'd be horrible. I would never do that in 100 years. But I
Feeling.
probably would have 2 years ago and not thought twice about it
Yeah.
because it was convenient because I was having a picnic or something. Like,
Right.
you know
Well,
what I'm saying?
yeah,
So
it
now
is
I'd buy
convenient.
like Brita filters. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Well, I
it
love
changes
that. I
stuff.
love all of this for you. I'm so happy for you because it sounds like you've had growth sort of personally and professionally in a number of different ways. If people want to know more about TerraCycle, where do they go? How do they find out more about that?
Yeah. So I'm gonna give you a couple clues. So one, Tom Zaki, Szaky, or just Google CEO TerraCycle.
Okay.
Tom's written 4 books. He's won over 200 sustainability awards, and was one of the stars of a TV show, believe it or not.
Got
So
it. What
there
TV
is
show?
there is a semi-reality TV show about TerraCycle that was filmed about 10 years ago. They had 4 seasons. 2 of them are available on Amazon Prime.
What was it called?
And it's, believe it or not, you're never gonna believe it. It's called Human Resources. I have no idea why.
Stop it.
If you go on Amazon Prime and you search for Human Resources, the TV show. Don't just say Human Resources
Okay.
because you'll get a list of a
Right.
bunch of other stuff. Human Resources, the TV show. You can
Oh,
buy season 1 or season 2 for like $15. It is reenactments of real life things that happened when they were first starting TerraCycle. It's filmed in Trenton, New Jersey, which is where our headquarters is and where I work. And a couple of the people that are on, like, are stars of the TV show, 2 of them are on my team. My
that's
wife's
so
like looking over my
funny.
shoulder, like, "Hey, that's Andrew from the TV show." And I was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
come meet Andrew." So there's a TV show. But seriously, watch YouTube videos of Tom Zaki. And we have Loop, which is our reuse platform, or just hear him talk. He's like a TED talker,
Okay.
right? So he's on stage with big pictures behind him, and he'll explain things about recycling. And I'm telling you, you will look at the world differently. He's amazing on stage,
I
and
love that.
has spoke at like the World Economic Forum and things like that.
Great.
But yeah, Google Tom Zaki, Google TerraCycle, or TerraCycle.com. There's
TerraCycle.com.
about there's about 100 different waste streams, things that you could collect in your home for free. So that's sponsored by a brand or a retailer. And you download a label, you stick whatever it is, like coffee pods is a good example, like save your corgs or whatever, put them in whatever, a box, a bag, whatever you have, and you download a label from our website and it gets shipped to us. You don't have to pay anything.
Well, I can tell you're passionate about this, Damian.
Yeah. Go to the website.
Okay, we'll go to the website, find out more about it.
Yeah.
It was fantastic seeing you again,
All right,
and
all
very,
right.
very happy
Good
for you and your success.
All right, good seeing you. I need 2 more episodes to become the leader. I'm only at 2 now.
You need to, yeah, we need to talk again and figure this out.
I need 4.
You'll be the Alec Baldwin of True HR
Nice.
Beyond the Office.
Okay. Love it.
All
Love it.
right, we are out, everybody.
you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to True HR Beyond the Office. We hope today's episode inspired new ways for you to find fulfillment and purpose in your personal and professional life. If you found value in our conversation, let's keep it going. Follow us on social media and visit us at ShannonClarkJohnston.com to explore free tools, resources, and more about our speaking, coaching, and consulting services.